Hello and welcome to the Behind Closed Doors podcast. My name is Alicia Aberley and I'm so grateful that you have joined us in this space. Behind Closed Doors is all about the types of conversations that we only usually have with our best friend, our partner, our counselor, our coach. And sometimes it's the conversations that we don't actually have with anybody else at all. The women that are interviewed in this space are all women that are making a difference to the planet. They're women that are inspiring and empowering. The intention is that you too will feel inspired and empowered by these conversations. So grab a cup of your favorite drink, pop your feet up, and enjoy this episode of Behind Closed Doors. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Behind Closed Doors. As an embodied confidence expert and as a coach, mentor, and trainer, today's guest is an expert at guiding busy, successful, driven women out of their heads and back into their hearts so they can reclaim their feminine power, radiate authentic confidence, and embody their true selves in love, life, and business. With her background as a holistic kinesiologist, intuitive and energy healer, our guest offers a unique approach to the coaching industry by teaching women how to bridge the gap between masculine-dominated logic and deep feminine knowing, so they can live in alignment with the natural rhythms of their feminine energy to completely transform their lives. This incredible woman is on a mission to empower women to reignite their deep inherent worth so they can reclaim residency of their bodies, release the addiction to being busy, and trust their inner wisdom so they can create the love, life, and business they desire with magnetic ease and grace. Hello and welcome, Blair, Rhianna.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
It's so great to have you join us in this space. I'm really excited. The topics that we're going to cover off today are a passion of mine as well. So it's great to connect with you in this space.
Definitely. Thank you.
So today we're going to have a chat about a couple of topics. We have how women disconnect from their feminine and also the signs and symptoms of energetic disconnect.
Perfect. Thank you.
So let's dive into how women disconnect from their feminine.
Yes, definitely. So this is, and before we went live, you and I were kind of talking about how we both have similarities and how we work with reconnecting women back to their womb energy and helping them really tap into their inner resources as a woman and how to live in alignment with themselves. And so one of the big ways that women disconnect from their feminine is there's a kind of societal expectation and a myth that women should be the same way all the time. There's a deep burden of consistency that women face in business and in relationships and just generally how they show up in life that says that we should be the same way all the time. We should have the same level of emotions. We should have the same level of ability to receive and give, and we should be performing in the same way and constantly able to give the same level of results and attention to what we're doing. And it's just not feasible for women because of the fluctuating nature of the feminine energy. Who we woke up as this morning is not biochemically, physiologically, emotionally the same woman that went to sleep last night. But our kind of societal paradigm is all built around the hustle, and we're very much in an environment where everything's built around the kind of 9 to 5 if you work for someone else, where the weekend is your rest time and you should be exactly the same from Monday to Friday, and it's just not a reality for women. And we suppress our feminine, we suppress the wisdom of our bodies when it's saying that we need rest, or we need to be able to go within, or we're needing comfort. And so women disconnect from their energy because they're trying to live life like a man in this kind of hustle paradigm of just push through. You just need to kind of pick yourself up and just keep pushing through. It's all about just get to the end result. It's all outcome focused. So when we're not able to do that, which is impossible for women, like we can't actually do that. We're not built that way. We see ourselves as not being good enough, or we're unstable, or we're not being productive. We can't be successful, whatever that means. So that's one of the key ways that we disconnect, is ignoring those inner signals and just trying to push ourselves to be something that fundamentally we can't sustain.
It's really interesting, before when we were having a chat about the fact that women also experience 4 seasons in 1 month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And so even in terms of like our personal development work, like there are certain times each month where you should just not be going near affirmations. Like, just don't do that to yourself. Like, because there's certain times when your mind is more geared towards the negative. You know, whatever we haven't dealt with bubbles to the conscious, because the veil between the conscious and subconscious mind becomes very thin. And so at certain times of the month, that is not the time to be trying to fix. It's the time to be giving attention and awareness to what's coming up. And then after that phase is when we go into that deeply reflective phase, where we're able to heal and hear ourselves. But when we're trying to constantly push through, we don't hear those inner wisdom and those inner whispers. And from there, and this is what we're seeing a lot at the moment in terms of burnout, you know, and particularly with the rise of online entrepreneurialism and being able to own your own business, we don't let ourselves not be at 110%, because anything less than that triggers a scarcity mentality where your business will fail if you take a day off, or if you don't constantly have a phone or a laptop attached to you, then we're somehow missing out on opportunities. And so we constantly push through, and during that time of the month where we're needing to go within and self-replenish and really hear ourselves, hear those inner whispers, we push through, and so we have less emotional energetic resources to give to the remainder of the month. And if we keep doing that month after month, we're running from empty, we're pouring from an empty cup, and then we hit burnout and we wonder why things begin to fall apart.
And it's not only burnout, right? It's also relationship issues. It's also pain within the body. I know in a job that I was in before I went out on my own, I was physically sick at the start of every week for 6 months solid, because I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I was go, and had to hit targets and had to do this, and it was stressful. And I wasn't listening. Well, I was listening. I just was choosing to ignore it. the signs that were going on there. And I think over this since I'm pretty sure it was about September last year, but since probably January, February, I've really been diving deep into this feminine space and understanding how when we shift from our, you and I have been chatting about this, when we shift from our head space to our heart space, then also drop down into our womb space, it's when we can actually totally connect in. It's when that disconnection, there's not even a space for disconnection, is there, when we can actually tap into that. And something that I found was that it's like an underground world. This is not taught to us. Us women, we're not taught to tap into our womb space and our wisdom. It used to be woo-woo to actually even talk about that, and to get the fact that it's not just connecting in with your womb and, where you have a baby. It's your ancestry. It's your lineage. It's the pain that you hold within you from past stuff, from current stuff. We store so much, don't we?
Exactly. And there's this huge reactive element in that we only become aware of our womb when we're in pain through either labor of birth or our period. So then we begin to associate the natural rhythms of our body and the expressions of our femininity and what our body does to convey that as a burden of our gender rather than a celebration of it. And that's kind of reinforced by, menstruation and childbirth, and, the actual nitty gritty of womanhood are seen as taboo topics, or something that you just need to get over. Like, it happens every month, just stop crying and get on with your life type thing. And so, and because of that, there's a deep shame that a lot of women carry about the expressions of their body. And that doesn't just go in terms of our menstruation, it goes in terms of our deeper desires, our pleasures, and this is where the fluctuations in the feminine energy strongly dictate this. It dictates the extent, what type of sex we enjoy, and if we want sex at all. It impacts the type of work that we do and how productive we are, our creativity, even our ability to manifest is heightened at different points in our cycle. But and this happens a lot for particularly female entrepreneurs, is that we fall into the addiction of being busy without actually being productive. And that just creates this idea that if we're doing any less than 110%, then the wheels are going to fall off. Whereas really, it's often a matter of doing the right thing at the completely wrong time. And that's why with the female entrepreneurs that I work with, it's all about getting them in alignment and their business activities in alignment with their natural ebb and flow as a woman, so that they're working at the best time for themselves and also having that time for deep nurturing, and which is often where a lot of our inspiration comes from, is those moments of stillness. But we don't hear them when we're in hustle mode. We don't hear them when we're trapped in scarcity and fear.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting space to dive into. Just to go back and touch on what we were talking about before with the 4 seasons, just to even understand that was a total game changer for me. That, 1 week of the month we're in winter, and then, we've got summer, autumn, and spring in there also, and just how different that is. And when you said about affirmations before, for me, it's like 1 week out of the month, there is no hardcore. There is no Gary V at that point in time. On the weekend, I actually had my bleed, and I spent some time, for the first time in a very long time, watching chick flicks. I love stimulation. I love a great book, an impactful book, and I'm not one to usually sit and watch chick flicks. And gosh, it was good.
Yeah.
It was so great to just nurture myself with something mind-numbing and enjoyable, and that wasn't business related, just to allow the space. And whilst I still get a little bit, it's not guilt. I know for a long time it was a bit of guilt if I stopped in that space. And I know other women experience that as well. Now it's more that uncomfortable space a little bit, to take that time off. I took the whole week off this last period because I didn't want to do anything on social media. I didn't want to be in my business. My creativity was not there the same. It was just total introversion. And to be able to allow ourselves that, to give ourselves permission to also understand that, and I love this as well, that we experience 2 weeks of masculine energy, and 2 weeks of feminine. So the 2 weeks of feminine are the week before our period and the week of our period, and then the 2 masculine are the 2 weeks in between. So in those two, I love how when we understand that, and when we begin to listen to our bodies, how we do soften in that 2 weeks of feminine. I know, totally. I know for me, it changes the type of sex I want to have. It changes whether, again, from what you said, Blair, whether I want to have sex or not. Then sometimes, when you're coming close to ovulation and you're in that masculine space, you're in, hey, I'm invincible. I'm going to send me over the couch. Like, it's such an interesting thing. And also for our partners, I found in this space that my partner now understands me in ways that he never did before. And first and foremost, that started with me to understand me. And now he knows when I need extra TLC. He knows when not to come near me. He knows when to literally bend me over the couch. And he said that to me as a man. We want to know. He said, all men want to know when they can fuck their woman. And it's like, excuse my French there, it's a bit hardcore just there, but that's what he said. All men want to know that. They want to know when it's the right time for that. And for us to be able to tell them, and I don't mean that that's all the only type of sex that he wants to have, but that's a natural male instinct, right? That's the masculine. So to know when that time's right for the woman, and to know when it's nurturing and gentle sex, and to know when there's no sex at all, like that's been great. And not just that though, there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes behind that. There's an understanding from his part now of why I'm emotional, when I get emotional, and there's actually less emotion now for me that I understand it myself. So such a beautiful, beautiful space.
Yeah, because it forces us to listen. Like, in order for us to communicate a need to our partner, we first need to know what that need is. Because otherwise it's just everyone's in guesswork. Like, he's just going by trial and error, pretty much just waiting for some kind of guidance. Like, ultimately, and a lot of women forget this when it comes to their partners, is that we all need an element of safety and permission. But in any space that requires us to show vulnerability and show a deeper side of ourselves, whether that's in the sexual space or, in business or whatever it is, whenever there's a call for us to be open and exposed, there must be a level of safety. And so, for myself as well, like when my partner really began to understand how my cycles were impacting how I showed up in the relationship, and we both let go of that need for consistency, it really was a massive game changer. And even like 2 nights ago, we were just talking, and just before getting into bed, he just kind of said, "Oh, so where are you at in your cycle?" And I was just like, oh my God, you're talking to me about periods. Like, that's just something I'd never experienced before. Instead, in previous relationship, it was like, oh, you're just hormonal, or, you're just emotional. And so it really does give that space for us to be present and honoring of ourselves and our deeper needs and desires. And that's why I was thinking before, when you were talking about that need to kind of go within when you're actually on your moon time, is that why there's often discomfort with that, and why women can often struggle with stopping and actually being present, is because we often can't, we struggle to sit with the discomfort of what comes up for us as truth. When we actually stop to hear those inner whispers, when we actually become honest with ourselves and true with ourselves about our thoughts, it takes a lot to hold space for yourself in those times, because sometimes we don't like what we're hearing. And when we kind of have a deeper understanding of ourselves, it demands attention. We can't ignore, we can't kind of unlearn what we've just learned. And so it causes us to have to ask deeper questions of ourselves and seek a deeper wisdom within ourselves. And that's why I think a lot of women do struggle with being able to stop and be present with their own pleasure, be present with their own reward, is because when we hear what we're actually saying to ourselves, there can be a discomfort there. But being able to give yourself permission and go into that space of allowing and surrendering to it is where we receive our healing. But often we can suppress that and we try to shut that down. So we get halfway through a very, very deep, beautiful process, but then deny ourselves of that because we would rather exit the discomfort as soon as possible.
I made myself sit through that discomfort.
Ooh, sit here and cry. Sit here and cry.
Just do this. I think it's for me, it's just that uncomfortable I'm okay to cry, love crying. You know, when it comes up, it's very rare these days for me. So this time around, it was like, whoa, you know, that's interesting. I'll just enjoy that. I know it's a release. Just I guess the discomfort in total surrender. That's, you know, for us women, that's, I know, and with my clients as well, I know that that's one of the hardest things for us women to do is surrender and trust. And yeah,
exactly. And I think that often the extent to which we fear something is also to the extent to which we deeply desire it. And that goes for love, success, abundance, wealth, whatever it is that we want to create for ourselves. The desire is equally matched by the fear. And so, yeah, definitely, I think that when we do begin to, you know, hear and let ourselves go into that space, women, like most of the women I speak to, they are craving a return to their feminine selves. They're craving the ability to be open and surrender and work with life instead of against it. They're sick of treating their body like the enemy. They're sick of thinking of their mind as being somehow broken, or they're feeling like they're not okay or not enough. And so they're wanting to actually go into that space of being truly open to receiving what they want. And so we're beginning to realize as a collective that outside of us is only one part. We can't create outside of us what we fundamentally don't already have within us. So there is that kind of deep call to look inward for those answers rather than handing our power away to external sources.
Yeah, beautiful. Love it. Just love it. Such a juicy topic. There's so many places we can go with all of this. It's such a playground keeps coming up. It's such a playground for us women to shift from that constant, you know, you talk the busyness in the head. I also talk about that constant chatter that goes on, and then being able to shift from that chatter to the heart space, and then being able to tap down into our womb space and our wisdom. What a lot of us women don't realize until we learn it, I guess, is that we hold, you know, the lineage in there as well. And that's our grandparents and our grandmothers and, you know, our mum. And something's come up for me recently where I could see the pattern of our generations. I don't know past my grandma. So my grandma, my mum, and myself have all had a really challenging time with our moon time, and our bleeds have all been really intense and painful. And both my grandma and my mum have had hysterectomies. And my mum said to me, "You should get a hysterectomy." I'm like, "I'm not having a hysterectomy. No way." Like, it's not just like go have a chocolate milkshake or something. It was like just the normal thing to do. You're like, I'm like, no, that's not it. And just through the understanding and the wisdom, being able to tap into my wisdom, I actually feel like I've broken the lineage in that space. I've actually changed that now because of the awareness that I've got that it has been a generational thing, to be able to then go, hey, you know what, it stops with me. When it comes through, if my son has a daughter, you know, it's going to be different. I choose that to be different for generations. And when we heal ourselves, we heal our mother, our grandmother, everybody else in our lineage, and then we heal the women to come, right?
Yeah, definitely. Beautiful. Like, because we are all one consciousness. We are all just physical manifestations of energy. So, and I know for myself that my healing journey has very much impacted on, my mum's health, and, the just energetic and emotional changes and shifts that have occurred within my own family by me taking ownership of my own journey and deciding that I'm not willing to live a legacy of disempowerment or unworthiness. Like, I am wanting to write my own story in that space, and it is incredibly healing for women. And that's why being able to go through practices like womb clearing is so incredibly important, particularly for women in the relationship space. Like, our womb has such a deep capacity for holding. So they've even shown that a woman's womb has the capacity to hold on to the genetic material of past lovers for a minimum of 7 years. And that directly informs what type of men we are attracting into our space, which is why so many women get stuck in this pattern of attracting the same man with a different face every time and reliving those same patterns, because our body and that energetic and emotional and physical contamination that we're holding on to is directly informing the type of men that we're attracting. It's directly informing our love alignment and our vibration in the relationship space. And so, yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And the shifts that I've witnessed and have helped facilitate have been incredibly profound, just by able to reconnecting to our emotional wisdom and being able to really step into and reclaim residency of our bodies, and really getting to understand and become familiar with the energetic terrain of our sacred feminine being. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Just on that, Blair, this is something that I'm curious about, something I haven't had explained to me, or I haven't asked the question. With that, I've heard that as well, with the 7 years being connected to past lovers, each lover, right? So, 7 years individually for each lover. And I've also heard that you can cut cords with past lovers. So is the belief in that regardless, you'll hold on to the 7 years of that experience and the energy of that man, or can you cut the ties on that in your experience?
You can definitely clear and cut the ties, like 100%. And that's definitely some of the processes that I go through with women that are wanting to release their past trauma in that space, or even just finally let go of that relationship so they're not replaying it. And so definitely when it comes to womb clearing and really helping to release those energetic contaminants and those energetic ties, then 100% we're not by any means bound. Like, I don't believe that we're ever bound to one trajectory. I don't believe that we are a diagnosis, or that, and because I come with my background in kinesiology, from traditional Chinese medicine, those things are a manifestation of dis-ease in the body. We just label them as disease so that they can fit into certain boxes. But so by no means we are bound to that as a rule, but a lot of it comes with a proactive approach to our energetic health, not just our physical and emotional. So yes, of course, there can be release in that area for women willing to go into that.
Great. And just through a visualization with self, if a woman's thinking about this, or if one of our beautiful listeners is in the space where they're feeling like they want to cut cords, they can do that themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. And so that's why I come from the empowerment model, where I don't ever want any woman, like whether she's working with me one-on-one or in a group, to ever feel like something's being done to her. I think we've got enough of that paradigm going on. And so, and there's plenty, like, I'm sure that if you could even Google like cord cutting meditation, so there's a lot of resources out there. Like, we have all the information that we need, but where women struggle is the implementation, how to take it and make that knowledge unique to their own life experience, and being able to take ownership of that. Like, we're missing that implementation part. So yes, women definitely can do that for themselves. And one of the first ways that we can begin to do that is by reconnecting and taking back ownership of our bodies, and really being able to reconnect and break that legacy of disconnect that many of us are experiencing, because only then are you actually able to feel what your body is holding on to. Until then, it's just logic. Whereas when you're actually able to feel it, you can have a dialogue with your body and hear what she's needing on a deeper level, and then take steps to facilitate that healing.
Love it. Beautiful. You're so nice to listen to. so great. I'm just sitting here listening really intently. Beautiful. Thank you for being here with us, Blair.
Thank you.
So the disconnect, the signs and symptoms, what are some of the common signs and symptoms of disconnect in us women?
Yeah. So to answer that, I'd love to kind of explain it how I usually would from my background as a kinesiologist. And so the first kind of symptoms that women can tend to experience is feeling almost like there's a glass plane between us and our external world. Like we're able to go through the motions, we're able to feel the feelings that we're meant to feel, we say the right things, but fundamentally we don't feel like we're present in our own life. And we can feel like we are quite literally living beside ourselves, like we're watching life happen to us in some way. We struggle to connect to the full spectrum of our emotions, and one of the big signs of energetic disconnect is struggling to find a middle ground in our emotions and behaviors. So we don't eat to the point of feeling full, we eat to the point of feeling sick, or we exercise to the point of our body screaming at us to stop, or we over medicate with food or with sex or anything outside of us, because at least at the very end of the spectrum of those behaviors, at least we're feeling something. And so when we're in numbness, it's hard to feel anything beyond an extreme. So whether that's in our emotional state, because when we're in a heightened state, when our fight-flight response is triggered and this becomes our default state, it doesn't take much to get up here and suddenly you're at boiling point, or you're at a point of complete overwhelm and shutdown. And so how this works on a physical level and in terms of the fight-flight response is the brain can't tell the difference between an emotional threat and a physical threat. So we experience the exact same physiological response to being stuck in traffic, having a fight with our partner, running late for an appointment, as we do to having a tiger chasing us. And so back when we were first developing this, because only in terms of the evolution of our brain, the front part of the brain, which is in charge of our logic and ability to self-regulate, it's very, very new to our hardware as human beings. We're far more geared towards the primitive state when it comes to points of stress and overwhelm. And so back in caveman times, that worked in our favor because we'd see the tiger and we wouldn't ponder the tiger. We wouldn't think about the implications of it being there. Our body would awaken, that fight-flight response would activate and we'd be out of there. As soon as we were out of that stress, our body would calm back down and would go back about our day. But because the brain can't tell the difference between an emotional threat and a physical threat, and it also can't tell the difference between something that happened in the past, something that's happening now, and something that's happening in the future, our life has become the tiger. And for many of us, our thoughts have become the tiger, and we can't escape that heightened state because we're constantly feeling fundamentally like we're not safe. It's not safe to be in our body. Our world is somehow not supporting us, and we're not safe, which is a huge, huge crucial element for women. We must feel safe in order for us to be in our bodies long enough to experience the changes and receive the abundance that we're wanting to create in our life. And so how this can kind of manifest for us is that over time, when we're in this fight-flight response, because that signal saying it's not safe, you're under threat, you're going to die, which is essentially what's happening, is because as far as the subconscious is concerned, whatever you've done up until this point, you haven't died, so clearly it must be working. So let's just keep repeating that, which is why we become stuck in these sabotaging behaviors, that we keep replaying these patterns. Because change, happiness, these are concepts. The subconscious can't compute those because all it cares about is keeping us physically safe and surviving. So the idea of doing something different, or having that amazing relationship you want, or being able to build your business to a 6-figure income, that is scarier for the subconscious mind than repeating patterns that aren't serving you, because at the very least it can predict and it knows the outcome of you repeating a sabotage behavior. So how this looks for women is that over time, because these signals just keep being reinforced and we're in such a heightened state, we disconnect from our bodies, where our energetic body disconnects from the physical in a last-ditch attempt to preserve itself. And so as women in particular, we can experience this as not being able to access the full spectrum of our emotion, or feeling numbness and disconnect in our bodies, experiencing pain during sex or numbness during sex. We actually can't access the realm of sensation that is happening within our body. Or we experience a sudden onset of fatigue or illness because our body is so desperately trying to communicate with us, but we're not present within our bodies. We're not anchored deeply enough to actually hear that. So we're not taking action on it. So then those whispers become shouts. So life will grab us by the shoulders and shake us awake, saying, listen to me, I need to be heard. There is wisdom here for you. And so that's why when I work with women, regardless of her history, no matter where she's come to me from, no matter what it is she's wanting to achieve, the very, very first thing I do is get her back in her body, and most importantly, diffuse the reasons why that disconnect occurred in the first place, so that she's able to be actually present for her transformations.
It's such an interesting process to come from disconnection to back into connection with self. Blair, what is one thing that you can share with our listeners that can help them to actually begin to reconnect with themselves?
So because I work exclusively with women, I'll talk in terms of what I would suggest for a woman. So the very, very first thing that we need to do is, as a starting point, would be as soon as you get out of bed in the morning, sit on the floor or sit in a comfortable position and begin to guide your breath down through the heart and into the womb space. Actually take the time to connect to your body, because doing this first thing in the morning is, firstly, odds are you'll do it because it's first thing in the morning and life hasn't gotten in the way yet. But also in terms of where our brain chemistry is at, that is the perfect point. That first thing in the morning or first thing before bed is primary manifestation time. It's when the veil between the conscious mind and subconscious is at its most thin, and we're most closely tapped into the realm of possibility, which is what manifestation is. It's the ability to create from that realm of possibility and have a dialogue with the universe. And so by being able to sit in a comfortable position and guide your breath down into the womb, and once you've begun to connect to that space, then guide your breath down and imagine coming out of the exit of your body, like through the yoni. Really allow the tendrils of your being to seek sustenance from the earth. Because, and this goes back to what we were talking about in terms of the fluctuation of the feminine energy, everything in nature has a cycle. Everything in nature has a natural ebb and flow. So women, in terms of our cycle, in terms of the cyclical nature of our energetic terrain and our emotions and our physiology, we are a direct extension of nature. We are an expression of the feminine element of nature. So by being able to connect back down into the earth and draw sustenance from there, you're able to ask yourself and answer those deeper questions of, what do I need? And ask yourself that when you're in a space of connection. Start your day asking the most important question, which is, what do I need? What do I need to feel more connected? What do I need to become the woman who's living my dream life? And then take action from that place when you're actually embodied. Because I often say to my clients that disempowerment is a symptom of disembodiment. If we're looking outside of ourselves for love, if we're looking outside of ourselves for validation or, success or approval, then we have disconnected from our feminine place of knowing and power. Because we can't create outside of us whatever we don't already have within us. But we can't access that wisdom if we're coming from a place of numbness, because then we can't trust our own discernment. So someone could turn around to you and say, this is the purpose of your life. This is exactly what you need to do. Here's how you make $1 million. And we can't actually hear that as truth because we don't have access to our internal guidance system to tell us what truth is, because we can't feel the resonance. So which is why women are handing away their power and going from course to course, program to program, book to book, because they're hoping that something outside of them will answer those deeper questions of who they are. They're hoping something outside of them will return them back to the very nature of who they are. But it all comes from within the body. The answers are already there. We just need to awaken them from returning from a place of disconnect and numbness.
And start hearing. Once we hear, we're able to shift, right?
Yeah, exactly. It all comes from, and also having us, and this is what I mean by embodied confidence. It's the ability to not only feel into the depths of ourselves, but also have a deep sense of trust in who you are at your core, knowing that woman, loving her for who she is, and trusting the internal guidance of our feminine knowing and the wisdom of our bodies. That's what true confidence is. It's not an external manifestation of swapping different masks, trying to convince everyone else of our confidence. It's coming from an internal place of power by being able to trust and hear your own discernment, so you can make a conscious decision in your own life. So you can consciously decide how you want to show up to create the changes you want to see.
And each journey, each woman's journey is her own. So no matter how long it takes you, short time, long time is irrelevant. Your journey home to yourself is your journey. So enjoy the challenges, enjoy the moments that are uncomfortable, enjoy getting to know who you are and what lights you up.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Blair, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today?
I think that one of the big things that hold women back is that we can't conceive of a future outside of our current present. Or we think that, well, I've had this problem for 15 years, or I've had this terrible relationship for 10 years, or I've always had this illness. We think that whatever time it's taken to reach our current point of suffering, the exact same amount of time must exist on the other side in order for us to receive change. And that's a limiting idea about, and it limits the scope of our transformation, because when we're holding on to an idea that life has to be this way, that we shouldn't feel these things, that we have to be a certain way, we shut ourselves down from receiving from the realm of possibility. And we also ignore those little wins that are occurring in every day, in every moment, of saying yes to ourselves by saying no to something that doesn't serve us, of being able to honor our body, of being able to hear those deeper wisdoms, because instead we're constantly focused on how life should look. And so what I would say to any woman that's listening that is maybe feeling like this, they feel a resonance, because if you're feeling it, it's happening in the body. We experience truth as a resonance. That's how we trust our discernment. But then the heart speaks in the split moment before the mind starts. And that space can be expanded. And that's where a deep sense of trust in yourself as a woman occurs, is being able to honor that space in between and breathe life into it. And every single woman has capacity for that. I don't care. Of course I care, but it doesn't matter what you've gone through to get to this point or what suffering you've endured. If you have a desire for something to be different in your life, you are 100% deserving of whatever that looks like for you. There's absolutely no reason that you can't have what you want. And so honor those whispers, hear your intuition, and then apply that masculine logic into getting it into your life. What steps need to happen in order for you to have what fundamentally you deserve, even in those moments when you don't believe it?
Beautiful. Love that, Blair. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Oh, it's been so great to have you on this episode of Behind Closed Doors. Thank you so much for joining us in this space.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely a pleasure. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
You're so welcome. To all of our listeners, I look forward to catching in with you next week. Till then, bye.